What's going on, y'all? Welcome to the Thursday night stream. Where you tuning in from? City, state, country, all of that. How you feeling? What are you eating tonight? Hopefully it's a delicious fruit bowl. Hopefully you got some mango or some pineapple, some cantaloupe, maybe some kiwis you got going. You know what I mean? Maybe you got some ginger tea. You know what I mean? Detroit, what's going on? Big shout out to you over tuning in from Detroit. What's going on? Welcome. Good evening from Cape Cod. What's going on? Big shout out to Cape Cod. Houston, what's going on, Houston? Welcome to tuning into the stream. I got another interesting video review today, but before I get into that, I want to make a quick public service announcement. Something that is extremely important that I gotta say, and perhaps talk a bit about more often. And I'm going to get into that for a sec, but I just want some people to, kind of roll on in here. Where you tuning in from? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, city, state, country, where you at? Donna, and what's going on? Welcome to the stream. Big shout out to you tuning in from Raleigh. What's going on? Welcome. And much love for the Rose. Thank you. Appreciate you. My Happy Healthing, my lady tuning into the stream. Everybody say hello to her and give her a big shout out in the chat. Donna, and thank you for the 5 roses. 5 weights, excuse me. Thank you, appreciate that. Coming through with the gifts. Oklahoma, Virginia, big shout out to y'all tuning into the stream. That's right, thank you for sending the corn. The Mayays. That's right. A little bit of indigenous flair going on in the chat. The corn for My Happy Healthing. True. Very true. What's going on? North Carolina. What's going on? Big shout out to you in North Carolina. Leonardo. What's going on? Thank you for the rose. Appreciate you for showing the love on the stream. Folks, double tap the screen to like the stream. I'm going to be doing a video review today of a very interesting video I just recently saw. I want to make more of a habit of doing debunks of bad nutrition advice given on the internet. How to spot bad nutritional advice. What to look for. How to determine what's legit and what's not. Right? How to spot weird, kind of goofy gimmicks. Right? We're going to be talking about that. Doing a video review on here. So that's right. That's right, we trade in corn here, folks. Burlington, North Carolina. What's going on? Welcome to the stream. Good to see you in here. All right, so I'm going to get into the public service announcement here. GG, what's going on? Welcome. Good to see you in here. User 633518068341. Thank you for the compliment. Are you vegan or plant-based? There's a difference. I'm ethically vegan, and I am plant-based by praxis. Right. So I adhere to the ethical principles of not participating in animal abuse and exploitation as much as practically possible. But as far as material conditions go, I'm plant-based, right? My clothes are plant-based, my food's plant-based, right? My lifestyle is plant-based, right? I'm the type of person where, the interior of my vehicle has to be plant-based, right? If I get a brush for my hair, the bristles got to be plant-based, the handles got to be plant-based. If I'm taking a capsule, some type of supplement, I prefer it to be plant-based as much as humanly possible. My boots, plant-based. My shoes, plant-based. So sometimes you can't be 100%, but you do as much as you can, right? Do I have more energy? Well, hopefully I do. I feel like I do. But I appreciate that question. Are you vegan or plant-based? Optimally, we should be both. I'm a bodybuilder. I want to stop eating meat, but still keep body mass, but cut fat. Yeah, I feel you. I know a little bit about that. Well, I know a lot of bit about that. Can you live without meat? I certainly can. I've done it for the last 8 years. GG, thank you for the wait, sending the love through the stream. Appreciate you for the gift. Agreed. Haven't consumed meat in 8 years. There we go. So the public service announcement that I want to get into, right? That public service announcement is: do not let doctors talk you into cutting organs out of your body. Okay? That should be a very, 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 very last resort. Right? So second, third, fourth, and fifth opinions are needed. All right? I spoke to somebody today. I'm not going to name names or anything like that. But I spoke to somebody today who had their thyroid removed. This is one of those things where when you remove your thyroid, you will be on a thyroid medication for the rest of your life, unless you get a new thyroid for whatever reason, right? So this makes you a lifelong customer of Big Pharma, and this can create substantial health complications for some people, right? Mainly, it could affect your liver and your kidneys, right? Giving you major problems with that as well, right? It's unfortunate. So that's why I say pay attention, right? Beware. Most of our health complications can be reversed with intelligent dietary strategy. So surgery is often not really needed. Don't have them cut out. Don't have them remove no kidneys, no gallbladder, no thyroid, no cutting out intestines, none of that, right? Trying to avoid the cuttings, no cutting out uteruses, okay? Keep your uterus, keep all your stuff, keep everything in your body, right? Keep everything in your body, right? All your organs mainly, right? Certain things are meant to leave your body, right? Really, what about very serious ones like HIV? I don't know of anybody needing to remove organs as a result of having HIV. Tonsils, no, you don't need to remove your tonsils, right? But you can reduce inflammation of the tonsils, right? Of course, removing your tonsils isn't as serious as removing, something like a thyroid or a gallbladder, for example, right? Or removing your uterus. Those are more serious things. There's no disease food can't heal. Generally, I agree. If somebody knows of one, definitely feel free to leave it in the chat. I'm on day 8 of fruit only. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. How do you feel being on day 8 so far? Can you shrink tonsils? I think that you can shrink your tonsils down to the appropriate size by reducing inflammation, as far as I know. Unless you have some type of mutation or whatever the case is, that might be a different thing. Yeah, I'm not eating in the session today because I got a lot of stuff to get through today on the stream. This video that I'm covering is going to be a bit longer. I think it's like a 23 or a 25-minute video. So if I'm stuffing my face, I'm not really going to be able to say everything I got to say within the time frame that I need to say it. What would you recommend? Add my fasting plan. Think the last was wrong. I had no energy. That may be a bit of a deeper conversation because I need to know what you were doing, how often you were doing it, and things like that. So there's probably like 10 different types of questions I would need to ask you in order to know what the issue was, to be specific. I have fibroids, want to eat less carbs and meat. I tried fasting, but as I'm a teacher, I failed. Cutting your carbs and eating more meat is not really going to be a great idea if you're trying to shrink fibroids. That's not really going to be the thing to do it, at least not from any of the study that I've engaged in. Shell Bell, what's going on? Welcome back to the stream. Good to see you in here. All right. Look at that. A lot of comments popped in here. I'm trying to keep up with y'all. What can I eat to give me the best energy in the mornings as a teacher? I'd probably say like watermelon, cantaloupe, maybe some mangoes, beet juice with apple, cucumber, and beet greens, or some type of mustard green, matcha tea, right? Things like that in the morning. Moringa powder, right? Things like that. Yeah, your best shot at shrinking fibroids is probably going to be something like a raw vegan or a high raw vegan diet, something that is anti-inflammatory, something that has the antioxidants and whatnot needed to actually shrink back the growth of fibroids by improving your metabolism, insulin sensitivity, things like that, so there's not an excess level of glucose for fibroids to feed on. Is one meal a day okay for diabetics? For some it can be, and for some, not so much. Fasting can actually be a very big mistake for some people who are diabetic, right? So it's really circumstantial, but it really depends on what you've been doing and how consistently you've been doing it. Hey, Mama, thank you for the rose. Appreciate you. All right, folks, I got to get on into it. So there was a video today that I wanted to cover, okay? A little bit of misinformation here. And it's about a video about a guy where he decided, or at least that's what he's telling us, and we're going to have to break up the calculator here to do some math, right? Because from what he said mathematically, it seems highly unlikely that he's actually telling the truth, and I'm going to explain why. Can't believe you skipped my question. What question? I can't believe you would do. How dare you? All right, let's see. I haven't going to the loo for a week. Any suggestions? I would probably say the quickest acting thing that's probably going to work for something like that is magnesium citrate supplementation. Number 2, I would probably say increase more hydrating foods, meaning more watery fruits. I'd probably say incorporating more fiber in your diet. Right, so probably things like adding chia seeds to your diet. Maybe you want to eat a sweet potato a day, like a half a pound to a pound of sweet potato. You may want to have some dark leafy greens, more of that in your diet. Some arugula, some baby spinach, some kale, some cabbage, things like that. Flax seeds, maybe some almonds, things like that. You may want to have more probiotic rich foods. Things like sauerkraut, kimchi. I feel like that's kind of loud. Sauerkraut, kimchi, coconut yogurt, almond yogurt, cashew yogurt, that kind of thing. Right? So things like that. There's a lot of different dietary strategies, but those are some of them. Generally, increasing magnesium in your diet is a good idea. Increasing vitamin C in your diet is a good idea. And having more water, right? So if you're dehydrated, that can cause some constipation. If you're lacking potassium, magnesium in your diet, for example, that can cause some constipation, right? Things like that. Also, food allergies. Maybe you're eating something and you have a food sensitivity to it and it's causing you to be constipated. I had somebody one time who actually had a food sensitivity to things like apples and strawberries, and they were eating apples and strawberries and experiencing constipation. I put them on a diet plan where we removed the things that they had food sensitivities to, and then they were able to make regular bowel movements, right? So you may want to get a food sensitivity test, right? Something like that can be extremely beneficial. All right. So, much apologies for skipping your question. I hope I answered it in detail. It's thorough enough. Give you something to work with there. Is buffered vitamin C okay? Buffered vitamin C is ideal, actually. It is ideal. Low potassium remedy. Tangerines, grapefruits, kiwis, bananas, things like that are good sources of potassium. Sweet potato, Japanese yam, things like that, good sources of potassium. Butternut squash, that's another one, good for potassium. Generally speaking, having more raw fruits and vegetables, right? Nuts and seeds, these are good potassium-rich foods, as well as the yams that I mentioned, the Japanese yam, the sweet potato, right? Things like that. Those are good. The butternut squash, etc. It's good stuff for potassium. Oh, also dark leafy greens, good for potassium, as well as essential fatty acids, as well as vitamin E, and of course, your alpha-linoleic and alpha-lipoic acid. All right. So you guys ready? Can I get in? Put a 1 in the chat if you're ready for me to get into this video review, where is a new guy I've discovered. Well, he's new to me at least. Butterman. Put a 1 in the chat if y'all want to hear from Butterman, the man who absolutely loves eating gratuitous amounts of butter, and see why he's doing that, and how much butter is he eating, and do we believe these claims? So I see some 1s in the chat here, right? I'm getting agreement. They're like, let's get into Butterman. I'm calling him Butterman. His name is Dr. Ekberg. Yes, cinnamon is phenomenal for improving blood sugar. Yes. Dr. Sten Ekberg. Guess what he's a doctor of, by the way? He is a chiropractor giving nutrition advice. It's very interesting. Okay. I don't know what it is with chiropractors having like nutrition YouTube channels. I don't know what that's about, but all right. I'm going to put a pause on the music here for a second. And we're going to play this video. We're going to see what Butterman has to say.
This is me loading up on butter.
Oh, oops. Oops.
Next 10 days, I'm going to eat 100 tablespoons of butter.
Hold on a second. Let me play that again because I messed up the audio. All right.
This is me loading up on butter at the grocery store because...
Can y'all hear that clearly? The guy, he's loading up on butter at the grocery store. Y'all hear? Put a 1 in the chat if y'all hear that clearly. Miss Queen Shell, thank you for the rose and my happy health, and my lady sending the hand hearts. Much appreciated.
Because in the next 10 days, I'm going to eat 100 tablespoons of butter to see what all the saturated fat will do to my blood. Hello, health champions. Today we're going to talk about fat.
Okay, so he said within the next 10 days, he's going to eat 100, what did he say, 100 or 110 tablespoons of butter, right? Is that what he said?
Fat in the blood, also known as triglycerides, and about the blood work that I did before and after eating 100 tablespoons of butter in 10 days. And I did this because I wanted to see what would happen. We keep hearing about how bad fat is, how saturated fat will clog up your arteries and increase your blood fats and cause insulin resistance and diabetes. So I wanted to do something sort of extreme just to see what would happen.
Okay, so what is very interesting is he picked 10 days, right? Now here's the interesting thing. He's going to stuff his face with butter for 10 days to demonstrate that, I guess, gratuitous levels of saturated fat ingested is not really a problem. And since he brought up insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, things like that, type 2 diabetes takes roughly a decade to develop. So just eating butter for 10 days is not really gonna... There's a big time frame match up here. I mean, at least do a full 30 days. I mean, what are you gonna do in 10 days, right? Now, if he ate just butter every day, all day for a year, maybe at least, well, you got an argument. But 10 days, it's not really enough to develop insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. But okay, let's see, let's hear it.
I went and looked at some of the websites about how to get answers, what causes high levels of fat in the blood, and the answer was pretty straightforward. Most people have high blood fats because they eat foods with too much fat. And they say...
So he's basically demonstrating right out the gate, when I look for answers to see what causes these health problems, the answer is pretty much too much blood fat. So he's going to now challenge the medical consensus by eating butter for 10 days. Apparently, he thinks that this anecdote of 10 days with this singular person is going to be able to be enough to challenge the medical consensus of, decades of peer-reviewed research. But all right, I mean, it seems kind of he should know science doesn't work like that. First of all, any scientific study that's going to be durable, you can run the study, but can you get the same results or similar results consistently, right? That's what peer review is for. So you can't just take one person who is perhaps an exceptional case, run a study on them, and say, see, that's all you need. Not really. You have to be able to duplicate the results consistently. And you're not going to do that with one guy over 10 days. So now, if you don't know how the scientific studies work, you may find this interesting. Person who understands this, they may look at this is a silly person, and if you're going to attach doctor to your name, you should know better than this. But okay.
The reverse is true. Also, how do you treat this? How do you undo high levels of blood fats? And that is, of course, the best way, the number one way, is to eat less fat. And here's what I ate during the 10 days. 1,420 grams of butter. But of course, you have to eat some other things as well. So I ate some meat and some fish and eggs and lots of vegetables with that. But all in all...
Oh, he ate lots of vegetables with it. Is he a little nervous about all the fat? Okay.
I ate 2,200 grams of fat or two...
Let's do some math here. He ate, on a daily basis, 2,200 grams of fat. Let's do the math, ladies and gentlemen. Math. Let's do the math. So 1 gram of fat is 9 calories, okay? So 2,200 grams of fat, we're going to multiply that by 9, and we get 19,800, ladies and gentlemen. So he is eating 19,800 a caloric value of nearly 20,000 calories a day of fat. Now, I'm pretty sure he's lying about that. I'm pretty sure he's lying about that. Reason being is because, and we'll get to this, but I feel like making this point a little bit earlier. So he claimed his body weight was 180 pounds. If you're a grown man where your body weight is 180 pounds, you're a fairly lean person, your BMR is probably going to be somewhere around in between 1,700 and 1,900 calories. That's your BMR, right? So if you have an active lifestyle where you engage in resistance training and about an hour or so of cardio a day, you can burn around 3,000 to 3,200 calories, depending on how much you're doing, right? Now, this is nearly 20,000 calories, right? So now if we subtract, let's say we be generous and we subtract 3,400 calories. It puts him in a caloric surplus of 16,400 calories, okay? So let's divide 16,400 by 3,500, because 3,500 calories is 1 pound of fat, right? So that's 16,400 calories comes out to be 4.68 pounds. All right? 4.68. Rounded up to the nearest number, right? If we round up, that's 5 pounds. So if he's doing this on a daily basis for 10 days, he's eating enough of a caloric surplus in fat over 10 days to gain 5 pounds a day. That's the math. That's how the math checks out. Okay? So basically, he's going to debunk himself in the end of this video, and I'm going to point that out. Just keep in mind the math that I just did. I probably shouldn't have deleted that on my calculator, but I can go back to it. Right? So let's continue. So I just put the math out. So I'm putting it out now because this is important to know that more than likely it is nearly 100% chance he's lying. Okay.
220 grams of fat per day, and most of that was saturated. 1,170 grams of saturated fat. So that saturated fat accounted for 42% of my total calories. Now, if we check with some general guidelines, they typically come in around 10% of saturated fat. And one in particular, the American Heart Association, says that we should eat no more than 5% or maybe 6% of our calories from saturated fat. So basically...
So the American Heart Association is wrong on this, according to him, apparently. He's going to challenge medical consensus here with an anecdote of one person doing something over 10 days.
I ate a little more than 8 times as much saturated fat as you're supposed to. And I was thinking, that really has to create some damage, right? And I agree with them that high blood fats are not a good thing. High blood fats can cause problems. Heart disease and pancreatitis, diabetes, strokes, and obesity are associated with metabolic problems where we see high blood fats. The question is this caused by eating too much fat? Now, in a little trial like this, there's 3 possible outcomes. Either my blood fats would go up, as the standard model would predict, and if that's true, then it seems like the standard model is pretty much correct, that we should listen to that and we should follow that. However, if my blood fats would go down or stay the same, then we worry that there's something seriously wrong with that standard model, or at the very least that it is incomplete and doesn't really account for all the variables that matter. Now, please hear me when I say that more isn't better. And just because I had certain results doesn't mean that you would have those same results. You need to understand the mechanisms and the things that I will talk.
So this is the hedge. This is CYA. Now, just because I did this doesn't mean you should do this, because you may not have the same results. Meaning, don't do this, poison yourself, develop an illness, and then want to take me to court for it. Right? So this is called CYA. Cover your ass. That's what this is called. Okay? All right, let's continue.
Talk about and apply them in your case so that you can have an outcome that you want. Eating 100 tablespoons of butter is not something that you want to do long term, because...
Why not? It's not something you want to do long term. This is the butter man, and he's doing it for 10 days. Look, I'm just playing, y'all. Don't do this for too long, okay? He's wavering. All right.
It is too limiting. It's called a stunt, and I did it to hopefully get some people's attention. So
it's a stunt, and he did it to get people's attention. Now, what you could do if you were a responsible doctor, you wanted to help people, what you would do is you would point to the aggregate of peer-reviewed scientific study and explain to people what we already know about nutritional science. You know, that the decades of data that we've gained over an extensively long period of time, and then be able to explain that to people, right? But that may not get as many clicks and views on YouTube, so instead do a stunt where you can create a video claiming that you ate 100 tablespoons every day of butter. You buttered yourself up. You ate 20,000 calories a day of butter. But don't do that because you'll kill yourself. I'm just doing this as a stunt because it does very well for my YouTube channel. Right? So at least he's being honest about that. He's kind of honest about it. He softened up the position a little bit, but that's pretty much what he's saying.
So that we can start thinking and questioning some of the guidelines. Which ones are true and which ones do we need to modify? And when it comes to fat and lipids in the blood, we need to understand, how does it work? How does the body transport them? How does the body regulate them? What are the different factors that make blood fats go up or down?
Okay, so he's going to explain the mechanisms of fat. Now here's the thing. Let's see how much information he leaves out.
Basic purpose. First of all, fat and water doesn't mix. So if you put a drop of oil in water, it's going to float on the surface pretty much forever.
This is true. Fat is hydrophobic. That is correct.
And the same thing holds true in the body. The blood is mostly water, so we can't just put the fat straight in there because it would clump together and it wouldn't go anywhere. So in the body, there's something called lipoproteins, where we have proteins that carry the lipids. And they look pretty much like this. This is a lipoprotein. And they've solved this issue of water solubility beautifully because...
By the way, he's skipping a lot of steps by doing this. He skipped from lipoproteins. And I'm going to explain what he skipped in a second. But let's see if he doubles back and he actually explains what happens before. Where do the lipoproteins come from? What makes the lipoproteins? Let's see if he explains that.
There is a membrane on the outside, and these green things, those are the heads of phospholipids. So the green portion is water soluble, and those yellow little things are fatty acids sticking to the inside. So the outside of this is water soluble, and the inside is fat soluble. Now, these are still super, super tiny. They're measured in nanometers. And on the inside, they carry the triglycerides and the cholesterol. And we have different kinds. So we have VLDLs, LDLs, and HDLs, basically. And
those come from where? So I'm just giving you a hint, but let's see if he explains where they come from. Let's see if he does it.
I want to think of these in terms of size, that the VLDL is extra large. In nanometers, it measures about 40 to 80 nanometers. The LDL is like a medium size, about 19 to 23 nanometers.
So what this is called is, this is kind of a bit of obfuscation. So he's giving the measurements of the different types of like lipoproteins. Now this is not him giving the specific measurements. This is not information that's needed for the point he's trying to make, right? So he's getting into the details of lipoproteins, but he skipped mentioning where the lipoproteins come from. I'm going to explain why he's skipping that in a second, but just listen.
And the HDL is small or extra small, 5 to 15 nanometers. So when something is extra large, it's because it contains a lot of fat. This piece in the middle here with the fat, the triglycerides and the cholesterol, that part is huge. And then as they get smaller, they contain less fat in the middle in proportion to the surface membrane and the proteins, which are these colorful balls. And the body makes these lipoproteins to distribute and regulate fats and cholesterol in the body. So we start off with a really big VLDL.
Where's that VLDL come from? He's really dragging this out. He's dragging it out. I'm kind of, let me know if you're getting bored, if you're just droning on about all the specific details about lipoproteins, and I'll skip it.
Low density lipoprotein. And this one is jam-packed with triglycerides.
Dedicated for life. Thank you for the 2023s. It's a good play on numbers right there. Shelly, what's going on? Welcome. Good evening. All right, so the reason why I don't want to skip ahead is because I don't want to seem like I'm cutting out or being selective about parts of his argument. USMC 8154, what's going on? Welcome back to the stream, and thank you for the 10 tickets. Appreciate you for the tickets coming through the stream with the love. I tried eating raw this week. Today I added wild rice. Couldn't do it. I tried to eat raw this week. Oh, today okay. So you added the cooked food of the wild. Well, I mean, wild rice is a good food though. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think if you're going to add something cooked to your diet, wild rice would be one of those things that's a good choice to add. I would say so. So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to interrupt a little bit, right? So he's explaining all the details about lipoproteins, but he skipped what happens before that, right? So, and I'll tell you why he's doing that in a second. When you eat a fatty food, that food, it goes through a digestive process, going through your esophagus, ends up in your stomach, gets further broken down into your stomach. But what happens is all that fat doesn't just go straight into your bloodstream, right? So what happens is with these lipoproteins and what he's talking about, your liver is responsible for synthesizing these things. What happens when you eat an excessive amount of fat like that over a prolonged period of time? What happens to your liver? Now, he's not going to mention the liver in this video, because if he mentions the liver, well, then he's going to have to talk about lipotoxicity, and that's not a thing he wants to do. Now, if he's going to talk about lipoproteins, he's going to have to talk about the oxidation of lipoproteins. And when they become oxidized, what happens? He's going to have to explain that. So let's see if he actually explains it.
With fat. And along the way, its purpose is to distribute this. And it's so full of triglycerides that it's basically this leaking.
Yeah, it's not good for your gallbladder either. Your gallbladder basically has to produce more bile in order to facilitate the breakdown of the fatty foods. So the more fat you eat, the harder your gallbladder has to work in order to produce the necessary stomach acids, or release the necessary stomach acids to produce that. In order to digest the fat.
These fats all over the place, and that's a good thing because it's delivering fuel to the cells of the body. And it delivers mostly triglycerides by far, but it also has a little bit of cholesterol to deliver. And 90% of all the triglycerides that you find in the bloodstream are going to be carried by VLDL. So when we measure triglycerides on the blood test, it is really indirectly these lipoproteins we're measuring, and primarily VLDL. So the VLDL and the triglycerides are going to be almost...
So he's getting into the technicalities of this, and he's really dragging this out. But ultimately, let's see. So just take note of how much time he's spending on this, and let's see how much time he puts into actually explaining what happens when these lipoproteins become oxidized. When you have increasing levels of oxidation in your body as a result of the accumulation of free radicals in your body, what happens?
The same indicator, but with a different unit. And then what happens as this is floating around in the bloodstream, then it's going to release a lot of this fat along the way, and the cells will soak it up. And then this lipoprotein shrinks. So it goes from being a VLDL to a regular LDL. And at this point, it's going to be about 21 to 23 nanometers. It's still going to be a good size. It's medium, but it's on the large size.
So he's getting very granular about the actual nanometers and all of this type of stuff. Why do you think he's doing that, right? This is like a form of obfuscation, right? It's kind of like when a politician, if you ask them a question and they will talk for a really long time, they'll use a lot of words, they'll give like a word salad. So the tactic is to talk for long enough where the people who are listening forget what the original question was, right? So it's a great technique that a lot of politicians use, right? So when you clicked onto this video and you're talking about butter and he's talking about the nanometers of lipoproteins, you kind of get a little lost, right? Because you're like, I don't know how this is relevant to what he's talking about. So this is a way of really running out the clock with this whole thing, right? So we're 8 minutes in and he's going into all the technicalities of lipoproteins. And so the interesting thing is that in the title, you would never think that this video is actually about lipoproteins. What you want to know is what happened, what were his results when he did this thing where he ate 20,000 calories of butter on a daily basis. We want to know what the results are, but we're 8 minutes in and we don't know what happened.
And this is a large, fluffy LDL. This is what they're supposed to be. But if this LDL sticks around and it takes a few more laps and there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of oxidative stress and inflammation and too much sugar in the bloodstream. Now this LDL gets damaged along the way and it shrinks a little bit further, and now it becomes an oxidized LDL or a damaged LDL, and now we're going to see it at about 19 to 20. So the more of these small ones you have, the more damage they can cause. But the whole point is the VLDLs...
So you notice how he skipped that, right? So he brought up oxidation, but then he kind of attached it to like blood sugar for some reason, which is kind of weird, right? Because there's a lot of things that cause oxidation in your body, right? Now, what's weird is he didn't bring up free radicals. He didn't bring up the excesses of anything else in your body that can cause inflammation, right? Or the oxidation of the cholesterol. He didn't really go into any of those things. The only specific thing he mentioned was sugar. Or which would make sense, right? If you're the butter guy and you're advocating for people to eat a gratuitous amount of fat, right? Sugar's the baddie, right? Don't eat those grapes because, you know, if you eat grapes and 20,000 calories of butter, it's not the butter that's the problem. It's the grapes for some reason, right? That's the implication. I don't think he has the goal to say that, but it's implied when you say sugar, right? When there's too much sugar, well, what is too much sugar, right? So is he going to talk about, well, are you cooking the butter under high temperatures? Are you cooking it past its smoke point? Or are you cooking it to its smoke point? Are you cooking certain foods in the smoke, in the butter? So for example, are you eating fried fish? And then when you're frying the fish, you're oxidizing it, right? So basically, in order for oxidation to take place, you need two things. You need heat and you need oxygen. During the cooking process, guess what you get in abundance of? Heat and oxygen, right? Causes oxidation. So in the cooking process, you're oxidizing the thing and then you're eating it. What kind of effect you think that's going to have in your body? He doesn't get into any of those details. But isn't this about nutrition? Why is he not talking about food? Why was the only thing that he mentioned was sugar? Don't know. Okay.
Come LDLs after they unload their cargo.
By the way, also when it comes to oxidation, free radicals is a big part of what causes oxidation. Free radicals is a great, you can really accumulate free radicals in your body when you consume toxins. Like, for example, let's say carcinogens. Let's say heme iron, right? When you accumulate heme iron over an extended period of time, plus you put it under extreme amounts of heat, right? Let's say excess levels of methionine and cysteine, right? Which are also carcinogens found in meat, along with the heme iron, right? What's another great one? Environmental contaminants that are found in fish, whether it be mercury, aluminum, plastic particles, things like that, right? Xenoestrogens, right? Things like that. Those also cause oxidative stress in your body also. So now imagine you are flooding your body with these VLDLs and LDLs and oxidized LDLs like he's talking about, and you're also getting an abundance of free radicals that cause oxidative stress in your body. Doesn't that seem like that's going to produce a lot more LDL in your body? But he doesn't get into any of the specifics of that. He actually moves away from the oxidative stress part real quick and back to VLDL, right? So he doesn't want to fly too close to the sun, right? So he's going to pivot off of that real quick.
The other lipoprotein that's manufactured...
Huh? That's fine.
...in the body, it's called an HDL. And it starts out super, super tiny, and then as it goes around, its job is the opposite of the VLDL. The VLDL unloads and the HDL collects. So the HDL is supposed to increase in size as it collects and picks up some triglycerides, but mostly cholesterol that has been used in the body, and it brings it back to the liver for processing and recycling. So
that's ideally what should happen, but the problem is if you have too much oxidative stress going on in your body, you're going to get more LDL. So that's the thing he's kind of leaving out there.
want the VLDLs to be small, indicating that they have unloaded their cargo. We want the LDLs to be large, indicating that they have not been damaged. And we want the HDL to be as large as possible, indicating that it's actually doing its job of picking up that extra cholesterol. There's a lot of confusion about how this is associated with heart disease, because most people and most doctors believe that high triglycerides and high LDL always go together. And this is true in some cases. It is pretty common, but it is not the way it needs to work. This is what it looks like when it's associated with high insulin. When we have metabolically poor health, then yes, we will see high LDL, high total cholesterol, high triglycerides at the same time. But
when he's talking about high insulin, right? What causes people to have high insulin, right? Because when he's talking about high insulin, what he's really talking about is insulin resistance. But now he has to talk about what causes insulin resistance. Well, the scientific studies show that the thing that causes insulin resistance is excess levels of saturated fat. By the way, so I did a video review on Tuesday, and I basically highlighted how the person making the claims provided zero scientific evidence for any of the claims that they were making. The reason why they did that is because there is no scientific evidence for the claims they were making. And they even pretty much admitted it in the video, and that was the thing that I pointed out. So we're seeing that again here, right? So there's a bit of a pattern. So in the description of his video, there's no citations. But the thing is, he doesn't need citations for the claims necessarily that he's making, because he's leaving a lot of things out in order to avoid making false statements, right? So, you know, we tend to call this lying by omission. Also, he's not, if he's going to talk about, he says high insulin, but he doesn't say insulin resistance, right? So basically, if you're going to have high levels of insulin, it's because you're getting high levels of blood sugar, which causes your pancreas to release more insulin. But if you're getting really high levels of blood sugar, it's probably because you're making pretty poor dietary choices, and you've got insulin resistance, which makes you less insulin sensitive, right? Which reduces glucose uptake, right, in your cells. And so this whole high insulin thing is really just high blood sugar, right? But the root cause of it is insulin resistance. It's not just high insulin in a vacuum. But in order to avoid having that conversation, he'll just say high insulin and avoid talking about insulin resistance and what causes it.
Only in the presence of high insulin. What we see a lot when we start changing things around, when we're metabolically healthier.
When we're metabolically healthier, so what he's saying only applies to people who are already not metabolically healthy. So if you're a person where you have metabolic issues, you have a poor metabolism, if you're a person who has high blood pressure, if you're a person who is a type 2 diabetic or whatever the case is, don't do this. Because he's pretty much saying, well, this only really applies to people who are already metabolically healthy, right? So this is a little bit more CYA, right?
It is that we can have high LDL and low triglycerides and still be metabolically healthy. And the reason is that we now have low insulin. So in the presence of low insulin.
So he says, well, if you're metabolically healthy, well, you're gonna have low insulin, right? But only if you're metabolically healthy. This doesn't really apply if you're not metabolically healthy, because if you are insulin resistant, if you are a type 2 diabetic, you can't get away with the butter thing. And he knows that, which is why he's saying, but if you're metabolically healthy, then you'll have the lower triglycerides, even with the higher LDL, but with the lower insulin. So there's a caveat he's baking in there, right? So this is a disclaimer to show that what he's saying is dangerous for people who are not metabolically healthy, right? So he's basically telling you, hey, you can get away with doing this dangerous thing if you're already healthy. So there's not a whole lot of value in this, because if you're a person seeking dietary advice or something like that, you probably have some type of issue you want to improve on, or health issue you want fixed. So this isn't really going to help you very much, because the thing you can take away from this video, which he's making very clearly, hey, if you're not metabolically healthy, don't do this.
Insulin, we see the opposite relationship between LDL and triglycerides. So triglycerides are a very good indicator of insulin resistance, of metabolically poor health. Now, there's a lot of confusion about why triglycerides and VLDL build up and get elevated. And the number one reason, and really the only reason that they build up, is that they are not being used. The body makes them for a reason. They're there to provide fuel, but they're not being used up because there's too much of something else that has to be used first.
So they're not being used. Now here's the interesting thing. They'll build up if they're not being used. Well, if he's consuming 20,000 calories in butter, how much of that is he using? Because he's eating enough butter to gain 5 pounds per day after burning 3,400 calories a day, right? That's according to the math that I did earlier. So based on what he said, you definitely don't want to do what he did because he's not using it, right? So he says the number one reason why they build up is because they're not being used, because there's too much of something else in its place. What is that something else?
And here's how this works. First, we eat some food, and the fuel that we derive from the food can be in two forms. It can either be fat or it can be a carbohydrate. And if we eat the fat, now it can go directly into the bloodstream and it floats around as fat or triglycerides like we talked about, and it can be available as fuel for the cells, needs no conversion. Or we can eat carbohydrates, and this carbohydrate gets into the blood faster. That's what carbohydrates do, and they raise blood glucose.
By the way, here's what he's skipping: ectopic fat. So when you eat food and you get a lot of dietary fat, especially saturated fat in your diet, you end up having a lot of saturated fat in your bloodstream. And of course, if you're cooking and frying food, saturated fat, etc., you're going to have a lot more oxidation and free radicals floating around, tearing up those lipoproteins he was talking about. And so now if your cells are consuming lipids, which is what he's talking about when he says fat being taken up by your cells, he's talking about lipids being absorbed into your cells. Now, in order to remain being metabolically healthy, you shouldn't really be storing more than 1% of your lipids in, like, let's say, muscle tissue. If you're storing more than that, right, that gets registered as ectopic fat, and lipotoxicity as a result of storing too much of this fat inside your cells. And if you store too much of this fat inside your cells, it prevents glucose uptake. You create a traffic jam. This is the basis for insulin resistance. So now what he's going to do is he's basically going to say, well, you see, the problem is the carbohydrates, right? So, well, he's going to demonize the carbs, right? And this is kind of like what the fat people do. When I say fat people, I don't mean actually overweight people. I mean the fat advocates say you should eat a buttery diet, right? So this is it.
And if I had a penny for every time I heard that carbohydrate or glucose is the preferred fuel, I'll be very wealthy. But it's not.
Well, he'd have a penny. The reason why he'd be very wealthy if every time he heard that he'd be rich, because it's true. If I had a penny for every time people made this scientifically verified claim, I'd be wealthy. That's good, right? Hey, people keep telling me the truth about the preferred energy source of the human body, which is glucose. Okay, that's a strange claim to make, but okay, let's continue.
That it's the preferred fuel, it's the fuel that has to be used up first, because high blood glucose is dangerous to the brain. And it is very, very tightly regulated because it causes damage when it gets too high. That's why if the body has the choice between fat and carbohydrates, it's always going to use the carbs first, because they can cause damage if they go to high levels.
Now the thing is that this reasoning applies to fat also. But the reason why we have an obesity epidemic is because, well, the fat is a lot more difficult to regulate. And the reason for that is because if you got a really high fat diet, chances are you're making some pretty poor dietary choices. So you can say, well, you know, your body has to really thoroughly regulate oxygen absorption, because if you absorb too much oxygen, you can burst red blood cells all throughout your body and have this cascading negative effect that causes very severe health issues. Hey, you know, if your body consumes too much water, you drown. I mean, you get, yeah, too much of anything is bad. That's obvious, right? So he's taking this one thing and he's applying it to blood sugar or glucose. But you can apply that to everything. That just doesn't apply to glucose. Your body regulates the amount of light that your eyes absorb. Your body regulates the amount of oxygen you absorb. Your body regulates the amount of everything. And when your body doesn't regulate the absorption, you get things like fatty liver, you get vitaminosis, you get lipotoxicity, right? You get insulin resistance. This is typically what happens. So this is not real. This is like an obvious thing that he's saying, but what he's doing is he's deploying it not as a general rule that applies to everything, but very specifically for glucose for some reason in a vacuum, which is odd, right? This is literally called cherry picking. That's literally what that's called. Abundantly Ashley, what's going on? Welcome to the stream. Good to see you in here.
So the more carbs you eat, the less likely that you're going to use the fat that is also floating around in the bloodstream at the same time. But it doesn't stop there. You can use some of the glucose, some of the carbohydrates you can use in the moments. You can store a little bit, but most of it has to be turned into fat.
Okay, so glucose doesn't really get turned into fat. That's not true. So basically, glucose can get stored inside fat cells. Glucose does not get turned into fat. That's not what happens, right? It's odd for him to say it that way, because based on everything that he explained biomechanically, he should know better than to say that, because it's actually not true. So this is a bit of a misspeak here, but I'll be a little bit charitable towards that. But that is a major kind of flaw in what he's saying. So basically what he's saying is correct. If you have high levels of fat in your diet and then high levels of blood sugar at the same time, yeah, that's going to cause problems. It's probably why you should have a diet primarily comprised of whole foods. It's generally a good solution, right? Not eating a bunch of, you know, high-fat processed foods and, you know, simple sugars and limited amounts of fiber, right? So what he's saying is like, yeah, sure, yeah, that is a problem, which is why you should eat a whole food diet in the first place, right? And then you won't have that problem, which is the problem he's describing here. But he's talking about it in a vacuum, because if you actually apply it to specific foods, the reasoning falls apart, right? But he has to make the case for eating, 20,000 calories of butter, and so that's why he has to leave certain things out in order to make his case.
So you eat the carbohydrate, becomes glucose, and then that turns...
Tanya, what's going on? Welcome back to the stream. Good to see you in here. Yes, Happy New Year to you too. Just like Charmin, thank you for the 10 roses. Appreciate you coming through with the love on the stream. He better not check PubMed because he'll get a lot of pennies. Yeah, he'll get a lot of pennies on PubMed. This is true.
Turns into fat. So now we have two sources of fat. We have the fat we ate and the carbs we ate. They both float around as fat, except we have to use the carbohydrates first. So there's no reason we can't ever get to the fat. But there's one more factor that makes this situation even worse. And that is, once the carbohydrate is inside the bloodstream, it needs some help to get that glucose into the cell. And there is a hormone called insulin. And that opens the gate between the bloodstream and the cell to let that glucose in. So short term, that's fine, but if we eat a lot of carbohydrate, then this insulin is going to be chronically elevated because it's always trying to get that glucose into the cell.
Now that's so basically he's doing this weird thing. GG, thank you for the mini speakers. And what is that? In the what is that? Oh, in the 2020, why is that so small? The 2023. It's like this little. Is that like the 2023 thing? Like, do you wear it on your head or like around your eyes or something? You know, them little mask things. Those are cool. Thank you for the love on the stream. Appreciate you. So yeah, insulin, right? So basically he's kind of like saying, hey, you know, when you eat carbs, there's this spooky thing that gets released from your pancreas called insulin. And short term, a little bit of it is fine, but too much is bad. Keyword, too much. Well, too much of anything is bad, right? Like having too many pennies is bad, right? Because if you had to, you know, make a down payment on a mortgage, you probably don't want to like fill your trunk with pennies and bring it to the bank, right? So yeah, too much of anything is bad. But yes, your body uses the carbs and the glucose first because it's easier for your body to use because your body is designed to use glucose as a primary source of energy. So he seems to have a problem with the natural physiology of the human body, which is kind of a weird gripe to have, right? It's kind of weird to complain about it. You know, us humans, you know what the real problem is about being a human being is that your body prefers to consume glucose instead of the fat. Well, just put the stick of butter down. Just, you know, eat some fruit. It's not that bad, okay? I promise you, eating some watermelon is going to be a lot more beneficial than eating a stick of butter.
So now the insulin is pushing it into the cell, but it also is preventing that fat from being used up. So now we have, on so many levels, it's difficult for the body to use that fat, and that's why it builds up. However, if we don't eat the carbohydrate, if we eat primarily fat, then the body is going to start burning the fat first, and whatever fat we put in the bloodstream gets used up, and our VLDL and our triglycerides never rise. And there are endless lists of...
By the way, what he just said only applies to people who are already metabolically healthy. That's why he made that that caveat, that disclaimer earlier, is because what he just said only applies to people who are already metabolically healthy, right? So he did a little bit of CYA earlier, right? So for what he's saying, that doesn't apply to people who are not metabolically healthy. If you are not metabolically healthy and your fat metabolism is compromised, if you cut the carbs, you make your issue worse, right? And it also becomes a stressor in your body, which makes your situation worse, right? Which is why some people who are diabetic, they can fast and do like one meal a day, and then in the middle of their fast, they wake up in the morning in a fasted state with their blood sugar at like 200 plus points, even though they've been in a fasted state for the last 20 hours. Because what he's saying only applies to metabolically healthy people. So he's trying not to get sued when he says that.
Food that they suggest that we can eat, that they're good to lower triglycerides and lower blood fats. And I'm not even going to go through all these.
Okay, so he's got a list of foods here that he's talking about. Oats, cauliflower, blueberries, spinach, bananas, broccoli, legumes, cabbage. He put salmons and sardines and olive oil on the list. I don't know why he did that. Beans, strawberries, avocado, rice, citrus, nuts, low-fat dairy, quinoa, barley. I don't know why he mentioned those foods, but okay.
Dozens on this list, and there's hundreds on various different lists.
So these are apparently foods that are suggested to lower triglycerides, right? Olive oil isn't necessarily lower triglycerides, right?
But what I want to point out is that these...
Sardines don't lower triglycerides either. Low-fat dairy, does it lower triglycerides? I mean, it's not going to raise them. I don't know if it lowers them, though.
Foods seem very, very random. We don't get any explanation as to why these foods would do that. What do they have in common? So I want to ask why. What is it that these foods are supposed to do? And here's the answer. If they don't raise glucose and if they don't raise insulin, then they're okay.
If they don't raise glucose, anything, even fasting raises glucose. Because if your glucose just continues to drop consistently without ever rising, guess what? You die. So, bit of a weird statement for him to make. I don't know what that means. He's going to have to... He can't oversimplify. He got really, really detailed about the nanometers of lipoproteins, but he's oversimplifying this thing for some specific reason. It's kind of weird.
It could be beneficial for other reasons if you don't have a glucose or a triglyceride problem. But if you put it...
See, now he messed up. If you don't have a glucose or triglyceride problem. But the thing is that blueberries, strawberries, bananas, oats, cauliflower, broccoli, there's a lot of foods on this list that are great for people who are like diabetic. So he's getting tripped up a little bit here. He's messing up. So is he going to talk about the glycemic index in this video, or is he going to back off of that? Because he's flying really close to the sun right now. So let's see if he pulls back.
Put it on the list to lower triglycerides. That's the only thing that you're concerned with. How is it going to affect glucose and insulin? So here's what I ate during these 10 days.
So he didn't answer the question. So how would spinach lower your triglycerides and lower blood sugars and insulin? Well, because it has things like magnesium, potassium, vitamin C, chromium, zinc, right? These things help to improve your insulin sensitivity, right? Legumes, similar thing, right? Which helps to improve insulin sensitivity. Blueberries, right? They're polyphenols, various different types of antioxidants that help to reduce oxidative stress, which is very important if you want to lower your LDL, right? As well as improve insulin sensitivity, right? So having all these different types of antioxidants, carotenoids, polyphenols, vitamin C, etc., lowering oxidative stress, reducing your overall stress level can also help to improve your metabolism, your insulin sensitivity, as well as reduce the destruction of your cells, including your pancreas. And then, of course, being that these are carbohydrate or glucose-dominant foods, eating these foods are more filling because of the fiber in the water. And also, if you're stuffing your face with blueberries, well, then you're not really going to be getting in the stick of butter after you're already full from eating the high-fiber, carbohydrate-rich foods. So out of the pie of the 100% of foods you can eat in a day, if you fill up a larger portion of that pie with strawberries and blueberries and oats and legumes and things like that, you eat less sticks of butter, and then you end up having less of a problem, right? So that's how that works. So he asked why, but he didn't give a thorough answer to it, which is weird because he's, again, lying by omission. He spent a lot of time explaining lipoproteins, VLDL, LDL. He didn't get into SDLDL, which, okay. And so he went through all the nanometers and all of that type of stuff, but then this thing that's even more relevant to the conversation, he didn't elaborate on that. So he's very clearly intent on leaving out very important information about those foods, which is weird because he's the one who brought them up. Okay.
I kept a spreadsheet, and I had 78% of my calories from fat, 15% from protein, and 7% from carbs. So the standard model, the general wisdom of the day would say, it would predict that my triglycerides would go way up because I ate so much fat, almost 80%. And
so here's the caveat. There is no scientific study that says if you eat 20,000 calories of butter in 10 days, that these are the results that it's going to produce straight across the board. And he knows there's no scientific studies that says that, and that's why he didn't cite any that says that. We said, who is he? This is Dr. Sten Ekberg, right? So he's saying, well, according to the standard model, well, not according to the standard model, and that's why you're not citing any studies that say that, because he knows that that's not true.
And that would also be reflected in the VLDL. We're going to look at both markers. And then it would predict that my insulin resistance would increase because that is what they say.
That is not what they say, and that's why he's not citing that. Because any scientific study on insulin resistance would show you that insulin resistance is developed over a period of years. Every scientific study shows that it takes several years to develop insulin resistance. He knows that. So he's not going to be able to raise it in 10 days. Even if you think about it, every doctor advises blood test results in intervals of 3 months. He did 10 days. So he knows that that's not true, right? So I don't know why he'd say that. So he's choosing to very boldly and deliberately lie about this one thing. I don't know why he's doing that. It's a bit weird.
And also that because fat is such a strong contributor to obesity, then I should also gain some weight. And here's what happened to my insulin resistance markers. My weight went from 185 to 185.
Okay, so he just debunked himself. So he ate 20,000 calories a day of butter, but didn't gain any weight. Now remember I did the math earlier, right? And the math showed him being in a caloric deficit that's high enough to equal 5 pounds of weight gain. Right? So we took that 16,400 and we divided it by 3,500 because 3,500 calories equals 1 pound of fat. And we did the math and we came up with 4.68 rounded up. We get 5, right? So if he's eating in that calorie surplus on a daily basis for 10 days, mathematically it's projected that he would gain 5 pounds a day if he was actually eating that. So if there is no weight change, it is mathematically proven that he's lying about what he did. I don't know why he would debunk himself giving these numbers, because it's a lot less difficult to lie about math, right? Math is one of those things, the numbers are what they are, right? So, I don't know, maybe it's because, so he did all of this talking in between, hoping you would forget about the numbers he told you earlier in the video, 16 minutes ago. So this is the thing, the politician thing, if you talk long enough, you forget the other stuff, right? So now in the very end of the video, so he did all of this talking and basically said, oh, look, my insulin resistance, or, weight gain, I didn't gain any weight at all, eating 20,000 calories of fat.
No change at all. And I might add that I did not have time to exercise a whole lot. I did a few.
He didn't have time to exercise a whole lot. So I said the estimate that I did for the 4.68 pounds, rounded up giving the 5 pounds, I was very generous saying that he was burning 3,400 calories per day. He's now saying that he barely exercised. So the math is now even more against him by him saying that, which is that he didn't need to say that, and he probably shouldn't have said that because it's hurting his case.
A few push-ups, I went for a couple of walks, but that's about it. My glucose started off at 95, and after 10 days, it was down to 84. My insulin...
So his glucose is at 95, it's down to 84. So this is very circumstantial, right? When he says, so his glucose, as in his blood sugar levels. Now your blood sugar levels are up and down according to what you ate and how long you fasted. If you have a healthy metabolism, and you eat all of that butter and whatnot, but you already have a healthy metabolism and you were, let's say, an athlete beforehand, you're already at a great weight, and then you do the whole butter thing, but before you get the test, you go through a prolonged fast, which drops your blood sugar now down from that 95 to that 84. But he doesn't give the time frame to show, well, before I got these numbers, I went on a fast, right? So you don't know what he did before he got these numbers. So it's important information to give out.
Started at 3.5 and it went down to 2.8. And I might add that
so his insulin went from 3.5 to 2.8, which would make sense if you're significantly cutting your carbs and then engaging in a prolonged fast in order to get your glucose levels down.
Ideal range for insulin is between 2 and 5, whereas
fasting does drop blood sugar levels. It does, and it can. Sometimes it raises it, but it depends on the metabolic health of the person. So if you are very insulin resistant, it can have the opposite effect where it actually raises your blood sugar levels, right? So it could drop down really low and then spike up really high, right? So, something like that, for example. So it is possible, but it's circumstantial depending on the person and their current metabolic health.
A diabetic is going to be more on the range of 25 to 30. And if you calculate something called HOMA-IR, or homeostatic model assessment of insulin resistance, you're taking into account the glucose levels, but also how much effort, how much insulin it takes to keep the glucose levels down. So you multiply the glucose by the insulin, you divide by 405, and an ideal number would be somewhere around 1. So anything from 0.5 to 1.5 would be ideal and very insulin sensitive. And I started out at 0.82, and after 10 days of eating butter, I was down to 0.58. Even though we're supposed to increase insulin resistance with saturated fat. And I ate 8 times as much as I was supposed to. Again, nothing.
So the reason why this is not durable is because the time frame isn't done long enough, right? It is very hard to find a metabolic study that's 10 days. It's a very short study. And if you're going to do it where your group is just one person. So if you're going to do a scientific study that's durable, what you want to do is you want to have a group of people, right? Let's say you have like 80 people, for example, who ate the 20,000 calories of butter. And then you had a control group who did something different. And then they did it over a period of several months, let's say 3 months, right? A 12-week study. And then you compared the study. That would be more durable than what he just did. He's not being monitored by a team of doctors or scientists or anything like that. It hasn't been replicated. And the group size is way too small to produce anything meaningful because it's just one person, right? So there's not really much to learn from this, but it does make for an entertaining video, and your average person doesn't understand how scientific studies are created and what makes them durable, and the people who don't understand that are susceptible to this kind of tactic.
I recommend, but obviously does not have that predicted effect of worsening insulin resistance. And then let's look at normal and healthy levels of triglycerides. So
what is it? I think it drops and then rises high for me. Listen. Yo, the stream be getting that blood sugar up. I'm just getting here. What's the topic? Oh, I'm doing a video review of, it's called I Ate 100 Tablespoons of Butter in 10 Days. Here's what happened to my blood, right? So that's the video that I'm doing a video review on. And I'm basically just breaking down, I'm doing a little bit of myth busting and explaining how to catch or how to spot false or misinformation, and propaganda. So this is like a little bit of like a media literacy kind of lesson to tell how to spot when somebody's BSing. You always have to fast before blood work. Well, you should, right? Doesn't every genius lie about one thing just to make sure his crowd is paying attention? Is that true? I don't know. That would be a funny way to catch on. It's like if you say something that's obviously a lie and then like the people who you're talking to don't catch on, then yeah. But if it's a very convoluted and obscure lie that can slip by people very easily, then probably not. The chiropractor, I remember, the guy's a chiropractor. Yeah. He's a chiropractor, but he's going to really explain the nanometers of lipoproteins. Like, all right, okay. So let's see if we got some more, because he's droning on kind of long here. I want to see what his HDL and LDL levels are. That's what I want to see. I want to see that. I want to see what his body fat percentage is, and I want to know his I want to know if he has any athletic history or anything. I'm very interested in knowing that.
These numbers come from Kaiser Permanente. That's an insurance company that insures people. They look at various different risks, and they know that if people have high triglycerides, then they're very risky to insure. They say that optimal for an adult is less than 100 milligrams per deciliter. And then they also say that younger people, like teens, would be less than 90, and preteens would be less than 75. So the general idea is that these numbers naturally and normally go up as we age, but I would rather say that younger people have less because they haven't lived long enough to get clogged up and congested.
Clogged up and congested with what exactly? Whoops! Clogged up and congested with fat. All right.
If you keep burning through the fat that you eat by keeping insulin down, there's no reason we shouldn't have these low numbers all the way through our lives. And they also say that a normal risk, not optimal or ideal, but just kind of average normal, would be 150 to 199. But keep in mind, most people are metabolically challenged these days. They have some degree of insulin resistance. So let's take a...
Is that because they're eating too many blueberries?
Look at my numbers. And again, optimal is less than 100. So I started off at 56. And after eating butter, after stuffing my bloodstream with saturated fat for 10 days, it was at 54. And again, these triglycerides are carried by the VLDL, so we confirm this finding. The lab range would be 5 to 40, with anything over 20 being way too high, in my opinion. And I started off at 9, and after 10 days with butter, I was still at a 9. So I think...
Where's his cholesterol levels? He didn't show the cholesterol levels. He didn't show the H. He spent all that time talking about VLDL, HDL, LDL. He talked the nanometers. He talked about all of that. Where's the blood test numbers at? Where's the cholesterol numbers?
We need to challenge the standard model a little bit and understand that it's not about the fat. It's not about the saturated.
He skipped his cholesterol numbers. He skipped his blood pressure and everything. Well, you don't check his blood pressure necessarily. But I'm interested in seeing what the cholesterol numbers are.
Fat. It is how high we're driving the insulin with the other foods we're eating at the same time. I think Mark Twain says it best. What gets us in trouble is not what we don't know. It's what we know for sure that just ain't so. And we've heard these things so long that they become true.
Okay. So if I could speak to him like live on a live stream, the advice I would give him, if you're going to make this whole thing where you're going to be outrageous and be like, hey, I ate 20,000 calories a day of butter for 10 days, don't say your weight didn't change, because it's a dead giveaway that you're lying, right? Consuming 20,000 calories of fat on a daily basis for 10 days straight and not gaining 1 pound, he's basically saying, hey, I'm lying through this entire video, right? Because the math doesn't check out. Right? If you're eating enough butter and fat to be the mathematical equivalent of 5 pounds a day, do not say that at the end of doing that your weight didn't change. Don't say that, right? Because you debunk your argument. You hurt your argument when you say that. Because mathematically it doesn't check out. So, but before I said that to him, I would ask him, hey, how do you feel about calories in, calories out? Do you think, let's say, do you think a person could eat 20,000 calories a day and not gain any weight? And I'm really interested in hear what his answer is to that. Because if he looks, he'd be like, no, that's ridiculous. Of course you can gain that kind of weight. I'm like, well, you just did this whole butter video where you said you ate 20,000 calories a day of butter and didn't gain a single pound. So you were lying then. So if I wanted to ambush him and catch him like that, that's probably what I would ask. But if I just wanted to give advice, I would be like, hey, check your math first so that you don't get caught lying this kind of way. Don't do that. But in any case, yeah. So at least he admitted that it was a stunt. It's not a scientific study or anything like that. He's not debunking anything because this one person is nowhere near the type of sample size you would need to actually provide any kind of rebuttal to the things that he's trying to argue against. But this is great for views and clicks, right? So if he's just trying to get views and clicks, then I guess, look at this. This video got 38K likes. He's got 2.39 million subscribers. He's killing the game, right? Let's see the metrics on this. This is like this video blew up, man. Let me tell you, YouTube absolutely loves the butter people. YouTube is like, this is a guy telling people to eat an abundance of saturated fat. Let's push that guy to the front of the algorithm. Well done, sir. Look at that. Maximizing. See, if you want to know how we get like that increase in heart attacks and diabetes risk, YouTube is playing its part. They're like, let's push these people with the bad dietary advice to the top of the algorithm. Let's get them up there, right? Misinforming the public, right? It's great for big pharma. It's great for health insurance companies to really squeeze money out of the public. So YouTube is definitely pulling its weight, right? It's an insidious game, folks, and we live in dire times, folks. We got people on the internet like, yo, I gained 20,000. I ate 20,000 calories of butter over 10 days and didn't gain a single pound. And apparently, people bought it. So it's kind of scary. But anyways, let me turn back on the music and get to y'all questions and comments here right quick before I log off. Let's see. That doesn't include other foods he ate, true. Yeah, because he's like, he ate some leafy greens. He said he ate some salmon. He ate all this other stuff. So on top of the 20,000 calories of butter, he was also eating like beef and chicken and salmon and all of this other stuff and greens and whatnot as well. So he was eating more than 20,000 calories a day and still didn't gain a single pound. That's amazing. That is a mathematical phenomenon. I just wanted to ask, what's your opinion on milking cows? I don't have any interest in milking cows. I don't really think people have any business milking cows. Unless you need to help the cow with a medical condition, but I don't think we should have like an industry based on milking cows. Right? I think that drinking from the nipples of animals is weird. I don't think we should be doing that. I think that's a weird kind of behavior to engage in. So yeah, that's my personal opinion, right? Like, I'm pretty sure you don't want people sucking your nipples for food. I'm pretty sure you don't want that, right? I know I don't want somebody to be like, hey, Remsen, I'm hungry. You know what I'm saying? Sweet, let's get them nipples out. It's kind of weird, right? Probably, so that's how I take it. Maybe that's oversimplifying it, but that's how I feel about it, right? Let's leave the nipples alone, okay? Let's get consent at least, all right? Let's species to species, all right? Let's pair up accordingly, all right? Okay, let me scroll. Bahamas in April. I'll be visiting for a week. My ears peak when it comes to Bahamas. Bahamas. Does anybody have any kind of questions for me? Anything y'all want to talk to me about? Right, quick questions. I think I'm gonna take like 3 really good questions. I want some 3 good ones. Kaiser got caught lying and stealing money from Medicare for a decade. He needs a new source. Ooh, yikes. That would probably be another thing on the list of pieces of advice that I would add. They have the real fruit. Yeah, I'm down to get some fruit from Bahamas, that's for sure. Will a fruitarian diet fix dark circles, lines under the eyes? Generally speaking, the answer for that is most likely yes, simply because of the fact that having an abundance of fruit in your diet is going to increase the amount of B vitamins you consume, whether it be B1, B6, B9, and even B12, right? Believe it or not, but you can get B12 from fruit. You can also get it from really any type of vegetable that has been exposed to fresh water and the freshwater bacteria that create B12. So that is possible. Right? I like to take a bit of precaution generally, so I would probably use plant-based milk that is fortified with B12. I'd probably use nutritional yeast because of the B12, right? So things like that. So I would probably supplement with like a B12 anyway. It doesn't really hurt to do, but you do get B12 from natural sources. But if you want to guarantee it, then yeah, I'd probably say it would be generally a good idea to supplement with something like vitamin D3 and B12, generally speaking, as a general recommendation. Oh, any advice for kidney disease? Whole food, plant-based, 80-10-10 diet. It's probably the best thing that I've seen as far as kidney disease is concerned. The caveat, though, with an 80-10-10 diet is easy on the legumes, right? So stick to maybe like one serving of legumes, maybe like a half a cup to a cup of legumes, depending on your body composition and how severe your issue is, because the beans can be high in the phosphorus, which can be a bit irritating for the kidneys, right? So that would be my issue there. But more of a high raw vegan 80-10-10 diet would probably be a good idea for kidney disease. 80-10-10 meaning 80% carbs, 10% fat, and 10% protein. I've been vegan since 2013, went raw 7 months ago, lost close to 50 pounds so far. Look at that. Knocking it out of the park. 7 months, 50 pounds. Just melting the fat, huh? Look at that. All of them dangerous carbs that Dr. Ekberg warned you about. You're going to go do it anyway? You're going to disobey the Ekberg? Coconut, I hear, is fire. Not like we have at home. I hear it's sweeter there, but I don't know. Well, you know what? Once you find out, definitely let me know. Let me know what your experience was with that. How much water do you drink a day, or do you get it all from your fruit? Lately I've been consuming what? I think it's somewhere in between 48 to 64 ounces of water a day. Probably closer to 64. It's like half gallon per day per day for the most part. That's what I've been doing personally. What's good for fatigue? I feel it sometimes when I compete at my martial arts tournaments. Carbon up. Right? Make sure you're eating enough, getting enough carbs. Having more like watermelon in your food, more mangoes, more melons. Right? Foods that are good for blood flow. You know what I mean? Getting some sweet potato in there, some red lentils, things like that. You know? Eating a bunch of bananas, right? An abundance of bananas, kiwis. Adding chia seeds, right? Maybe you want to do a banana chia pudding kind of deal. With some cacao powder in there, you might want to do something like that. So you may want to do something like that if you're getting into a competition. Keep your electrolytes up. Right? And when you eat that stuff, fuel up the day before, right? General rule, whatever you eat today is what you're going to feel tomorrow. Right? So what you eat today, it loads the gun and has it ready to fire tomorrow. Agnes, what's going on? Thank you for the hand hearts. Appreciate you. That's right. I'm a big fan of martial arts. I love it. I'm here for it. What kind of martial arts are you doing, by the way? Just like Charmin, thank you for the 11 roses. Appreciate you. I see you, Tanya. Oh, okay, gotcha. He said, oh, just like me. Okay, gotcha. You changed the name. Gotcha. Okay. I reached out to you in the Discord to check in with you. Let me know how you're doing. What's going on? You know what I'm saying? Fill me in. Appreciate you tuning in. I saw you in there earlier too, sounding off. I didn't peep the name change, I think. I'll be testing for my master's in Muda Kwan Taekwondo. Nice. Protect your bursa. You know what I'm saying? Keep your hips and don't overdo it with the hips. You don't want to get like a hip impingement or anything like that. I like Taekwondo. Oh, you got back all your results now. Okay, gotcha, yeah. Let's have a chat. I know 8 disciplines or styles. 8. Look at that. Lifelong practitioner. Big shout out to you. Alright, so I'm going to end on this, folks. The public service announcement I made in the beginning of the stream, I'm going to make it before I log off here. And that is, do not be easily talked into having a surgery where a vital organ is removed from your body. Okay? Do what you got to do. Get your 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and even 7th opinion if you have to. Okay? One quote that Dr. Sabi said that I'm a big fan of is, if the body was meant to be opened up, it would have came with a zipper. That's what he said. It's a bit reductive, but I think it makes the point, right? So, you know, if you have your doctor pressuring you to remove your gallbladder or your uterus or your thyroid, right? Tell them you'll pump the brakes. I ain't quick to have anything removed. And don't let people scare you into it, okay? Because you have to live with getting that cut out for the rest of your life. So you want to make sure that you exhaust all of your options first, and your best options is going to be through your diet and your lifestyle, right? So having said that, I want to make that clear for people, for whoever's listening, because understand that doctors, not to say doctors are evil people or anything like that, I'm not making a moral judgment. What I'm saying is your best interest is to be whole. Their best interest is to make money. It's capitalism, right? Bottom line. You got to make money for the hospital. You got to make money for the doctor's office. Got to make money. So, Big Pharma got to make that money, right? A lot of money being passed around, a lot of kickbacks. So, those surgeries make them big time money. That's number one. And then number two, them surgeries often come with medications, often that you'll have to take for the rest of your life, which makes you a lifelong patient for Big Pharma. So you become a living human cash cow. Okay? So you'll forever have medical companies, pharmaceutical companies, riding your back and got their hand in your pocket at all times, right? So if you don't condone that, if you don't consent to that, exhaust all your options first, right? Diet and lifestyle, exercise, all that type of stuff. That's your best bet. Herbs, spices, foods, rest, meditation, self-care, all that type of stuff. Those are your best bets, okay? So, I'll leave it there. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight and coming to hang out with me. I know we got nerdy and long-winded. That video was long. It was like That video was nearly like a half hour long. It's exhaustive. Just reading the comments here. Agreed, had my appendix removed, but that is because it ruptured. I have gallstones that I'm trying to get rid of. Ooh, the gallstones thing. I had somebody with gallstones, and they were real close to getting their gallbladder removed. They reached out to me. They got a consultation call. We got on a plan, and they still have their gallbladder. No more pain, no more stones. They feel great. We did it. So, I'll be taking that story to the grave, knowing that in my life, I saved people from getting unnecessary surgeries. And that was one of them. So, this is important work. So, what I do means a lot to me. But yeah, so it can be done naturally. Thank you, Coach. You're the best. Sign up and get your consultation. True. Listen to Tanya. She'll tell you. Do you have anyone with gallbladder problems? I don't currently have anybody with a gallbladder problem, but the people who I have no longer have gallbladder problems. So I got a good track record when it comes to that. So I like it. All right. So if you want to request a consultation, you go to my profile through here. Right, you tap on my picture over there. You go to my profile, you hit the link in my bio and sign up. So, yep, that's pretty much it. I'm going to turn it in tonight. Good stream, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in. And I'll see y'all next Tuesday. Take care.